In Seattle's Beacon Hill neighborhood, a couple stood in their backyard watching a 125-square-foot home get lowered into place behind their house. 6 blocks away, tent encampments wrapped around an interstate bridge. The person who moved into that tiny home had been sleeping on the street. But what might surprise you even more is this. Across Seattle, Los Angeles, and Portland, hundreds of homeowners are now volunteering their backyards to house complete strangers. And some of these experiments are working better than anything the government has tried in decades. To understand why people are turning to backyard homes, you have to understand what they are up against. The United States hit a record 771,480 people experiencing homelessness during the 2024 count, and more than 266,000 of them were sleeping outside, on sidewalks, in tents, under highway overpasses, in the woods behind strip malls. There are 7.2 million fewer affordable housing units than low-income renters who need them. In 80% of American counties, a full-time worker earning minimum wage cannot afford a basic apartment. And a single affordable housing unit in Los Angeles can cost upwards of $600,000 to build. By the time those units open their doors, the number of people who need them has already grown. The federal government spends around $4.5 billion a year on homeless services. That sounds like a lot, until you realize it covers barely 12% of what experts say is actually needed. Cities are overwhelmed. Waitlists for affordable housing stretch for years, sometimes over a decade. And the traditional approach of building large apartment complexes takes forever and costs a fortune that most cities simply do not have. So what happens when the system is too slow, too expensive, and too small to keep up? Some Americans decided to stop waiting. The block project started with an architect named Rex Holbein, who had spent years running a nonprofit called Facing Homelessness in Seattle. The whole thing began after he befriended an unhoused artist who used to sit in front of his architecture studio. That relationship changed how Holbein saw homelessness entirely. He stopped thinking about it as a policy debate and started thinking about it as a neighbor problem. Together with his daughter Jen Lafreniere, who is also an architect, Holbein came up with an idea that sounded almost too simple. What if homeowners who wanted to help could just donate a piece of their backyard? What if someone built a small, fully equipped home right there behind their house and moved in a person who had been sleeping on the street? The very first block home went up in a family's backyard in Beacon Hill. The homeowners were a couple who had watched tent encampments growing along the interstate freeways that cut through the Marmtier neighborhood. By the time winter arrived, tents had wrapped around the hill and taken root under the interstate bridge, just 6 blocks from their front door. They wanted to do something more than donate blankets. The tiny homes themselves are only 125 square feet, roughly the size of a large bedroom. But they are remarkably complete. Each one has a working kitchen with appliances, a full bathroom, a sleeping area, and a small covered front porch. They have solar panels on the roof and rainwater collection systems. The insulation is made from sheep's wool. The windows are triple-paned European-style units designed for temperature regulation. The siding is built from juniper, which is actually an invasive wood in the Pacific Northwest, so using it serves a double purpose. These are not shacks or camping shelters. They meet the Living Building Challenge certification, the greenest and most rigorous sustainability standard in the world. In many cases, the tiny home in the backyard is the most technologically advanced house on the entire block. Holbein insisted on that level of quality for a specific reason. He wanted the residents to have something they could be proud of, something they could invite their neighbors in to see. He wanted the tiny home to start conversations, not end them. The block project handles everything. They pay for the home. They manage the permits. They connect the homeowner with vetted social service agencies that identify a potential resident and work to find a good match. They bring in volunteer landscape architects to design the surrounding yard. They introduce the project to every single neighbor on the block. and only move forward when there is a collective agreement. The homeowner does not pay a dime. They do not charge rent. The nonprofit even retains ownership of the home to avoid increasing the homeowner's property taxes. All the homeowner has to do is be a good neighbor. And the results have been remarkable. The Block project reports a 96% housing retention rate. That means nearly every single person who moved into one of these backyard homes either stayed there long-term or eventually transitioned into other stable permanent housing. One resident named Peter had struggled with mental health issues his whole adult life. He bounced between shelters and the streets for years, mostly in Salem, Oregon. He described every place he had ever lived as uncomfortable, unstable, and weird. Shelters felt chaotic. The streets were worse. When he moved into a block home in Seattle, it was the first time he had ever felt genuinely settled. He had his own kitchen, his own bathroom, his own front porch. He could cook a meal and sit outside with a cup of coffee in the morning. That sounds small, but for someone who spent years not knowing where he would sleep next week, it was everything. For context, many traditional homeless programs struggle to keep people housed for more than a year. A 96% retention rate is almost unheard of in this field. But Seattle was not the only city experimenting with this idea. In Portland, Oregon, Multnomah County launched a program called A Place for You in 2017. The deal was simple. The county would build a free tiny home in your backyard, fully furnished with a kitchen, a living space, a bedroom, and a private bathroom. In return, you agreed to let a homeless family live there for 5 years. After those 5 years, the homeowner could keep the home and rent it to whoever they wanted. The response was overwhelming. Nearly 1,000 homeowners signed up within weeks to request more information. The county celebrated being the first jurisdiction in the country to successfully test this model. National media picked up the story. One homeowner named Martha Chambers had a 288-square-foot cottage placed in her North Portland backyard in April of 2018. She called it a really nice build with a well-designed layout. But Portland's program ran into serious trouble almost immediately. It was handed off from one government agency to the next, with nobody taking real ownership or providing consistent oversight. Communication broke down between caseworkers and families. Support vanished. 3 of the 4 families placed in backyard homes eventually left. And nobody at the county could say with certainty whether those families found stable housing or returned to homelessness. Only one homeowner, a man named John Lamar in Northeast Portland, successfully hosted a father and son for the full 5 years. Lamar said the program had real potential, but needed far greater accountability. The difference between Portland's failure and Seattle's success comes down to one thing: community support infrastructure. In Portland, the government built homes and then essentially walked away. In Seattle, the Block project wrapped every single participant in a network of case managers, volunteers, social workers, and engaged neighbors who checked in regularly. Someone was always available. The home was just the beginning. The relationships were what made it work. Los Angeles took a different approach entirely. The city launched an ADU accelerator program that offers homeowners forgivable loans of up to $75,000 to build accessory dwelling units in their backyards. Tenants pay no more than 30% of whatever income they have, and the city covers the rest through housing choice vouchers. If the homeowner keeps renting to low-income or formerly homeless tenants for 10 years, the entire loan is completely forgiven. After that, the homeowner owns the backyard unit outright and can rent it at market rate, use it for family, or turn it into whatever they need. The city framed it this way: if just 10% of the 500,000 single-family homes in Los Angeles added a backyard unit, the city could increase its housing supply by half. No new high-rises, no parks bulldozed, no zoning battles. Just small homes tucked behind existing ones, blending into the blocks that are already there. California has gone even further at the state level. The California Housing Finance Agency created a grant program offering up to $40,000 to help homeowners cover the upfront costs of ADU construction. Over $100 million in state and agency funds have been allocated to the program. Cities like San Jose, San Diego, and Long Beach have all loosened their zoning laws to make backyard homes easier and cheaper to build. Denver now offers forgivable loans of up to $25,000 for homeowners who rent their accessory dwelling units. To low-income tenants, even places you would not expect, like small townships in rural Pennsylvania, have started allowing tiny homes on wheels as legal backyard dwelling units. If you are finding this worth your time, hit subscribe. I cover stories like this every week, where ordinary people are finding real solutions to problems that feel impossible to solve. One thing that stuck with me while researching this is how many people die from cold weather exposure every year, and not just people living on the streets. During the 2021 Texas grid failure, 4.5 million households lost power for days, and indoor temperatures in some homes dropped below 30 degrees Fahrenheit. Children lose body heat up to 4 times faster than adults because of their smaller body mass. Any family can find themselves in that kind of emergency with zero warning. One product I came across that made a lot of sense is called TerraShell. It is a compact emergency thermal bivvy that uses a reflective lining to trap your body heat without needing batteries, gas, or electricity. The whole thing folds down to roughly the size of a soda can, so it fits in a glove box, a purse, a hall closet, wherever you keep your emergency supplies. Tossing one of these in the car takes about 5 seconds and could genuinely matter someday. Now, one of the most fascinating parts of the Block project is what it does to the homeowners themselves. Rex Holbein described the effect as turning NIMBYs into YIMBYs. NIMBY stands for Not in My Backyard, which is the gut-level instinct that makes people resist homeless shelters, affordable housing developments, or anything related to homelessness near their property. YIMBY is the opposite. Yes, in my backyard. When the Block project first launched, 130 Seattle families expressed interest in hosting a tiny home, but the process is deliberately slow. Each placement requires careful matching between the homeowner and the future resident. The nonprofit interviews both parties extensively. They assess the yard for permitting requirements. They bring in volunteer landscape architects to design privacy plantings and pathways around the tiny home. They check in regularly after move-in, offering case management and connecting residents with job training, health services, and whatever goals they set for themselves. Holbein said he would rather build 9 homes with deep community roots than rush through 90 that fall apart within a year. And he has a real reason for that caution beyond just philosophy. In 2018, an elderly couple in Bellevue, Washington, took in a homeless woman on their own, completely outside any formal program or vetting process. She ended up stabbing them and setting fires inside their home. Both survived, but the incident terrified people and made national news. Something like that happening inside a Block home would be devastating for the entire movement, and Holbein knows it. The Block project has never had a violent incident, and he credits that entirely to the matching process and the community support network. There is solid research backing up why this approach works. Studies consistently show that when housed people actually get to know someone who has experienced homelessness on a personal level, their entire perception changes. The stereotypes break down, the fear fades. They stop seeing a statistic and start seeing a human being with a story, with a sense of humor, with preferences about how they take their coffee. One Seattle homeowner said the hardest part was not having a stranger in the backyard. The hardest part was realizing how long it took her to see homeless people as real neighbors in the first place. Sarah Rankin, a law professor at Seattle University, who founded the Homeless Rights Advocacy Project, called the Block Project one of the few bright lights in how America talks about homelessness. But the big question remains: can this actually scale? The Block Project has has identified roughly 40,000 eligible lots in Seattle alone. A lot only needs about 3,200 square feet of space and some ground that is not covered in concrete. If even a third of those lots hosted a tiny home, it would fundamentally change the homelessness picture in that city. The fabrication workshop can build one house per week when running at full capacity. The challenge is that this model moves at the pace of trust and community. You cannot mass-produce relationships. Every placement requires willing homeowners, supportive neighbors, a carefully vetted resident, and ongoing case management from people who actually care. That takes time and money. Each block home costs the nonprofit real money to build and maintain, but the math still works out. A single emergency shelter bed in a city like Seattle runs roughly $15,000 per person per year. Traditional affordable housing construction can cost $300,000 to $600,000 per unit before anyone even moves in. A block home, once built, costs a fraction of that to maintain because the community itself provides most of the ongoing support. The homeowner is right there. The neighbors know who lives on their block. The case manager checks in regularly. The expensive part of housing someone is not the building. It is keeping them housed. And that is exactly what the block model gets right. And the broader accessory dwelling unit movement is picking up steam on its own, independent of any homelessness program. Across the country, cities and states are ripping out zoning restrictions that for decades made it illegal for homeowners to build a second dwelling on their own property. Those old rules were originally designed to protect the character of single-family neighborhoods from increased density. But in a country where home prices jumped 35% between 2020 and 2023, while wages went up only 12%, where a family of four now needs a gross income of over $100,000 just to afford a median-priced home, those same rules are now locking millions of people out of stable housing entirely. The cultural shift is slow but real. 20 years ago, the idea of a homeowner voluntarily putting a homeless stranger in their backyard would have sounded absurd to nearly any American you asked. Today, programs like the Block Project have waiting lists of people eager to participate. When Portland announced its program, nearly 1,000 families raised their hands in a matter of weeks. When the early hosts were asked why they did it, they said it was one of the easiest and most meaningful ways they had ever found to make a direct impact. The motivation is not always pure altruism, and that is fine. In Los Angeles's program, homeowners end up with a free backyard unit worth tens of thousands of dollars after 10 years. Accessory dwelling units can significantly increase property values. Some homeowners build them for aging parents or adult children who cannot afford rent nearby. The fact that the same small building can serve a formerly homeless family today and become a guest house or rental income tomorrow is exactly what makes these programs politically viable. You do not need everyone to be a saint. You just need enough people willing to share a piece of their yard in exchange for something that benefits them, too. And there is a growing recognition among Americans that homelessness is not just a downtown problem or a freeway overpass problem. It is a neighborhood problem, and neighborhoods, it turns out, might be uniquely positioned to help solve it. This is not going to end homelessness by itself. No single program will. The affordable housing gap in this country is massive and still growing. Federal funding is under pressure. Mental health and addiction treatment services remain critically underfunded. And the number of Americans living paycheck to paycheck, one crisis away from losing their own housing, is higher than it has been in years. But what the backyard movement proves is something that decades of policy debates and budget fights have completely missed. When you give ordinary people a structured, supported way to help their neighbors, they will show up. The homeowners in Seattle did not have special training. They were not social workers or housing policy experts. They were just people who lived 6 blocks from a growing encampment and decided they could not keep walking past it anymore. a family in Beacon Hill, a retired couple on Capitol Hill, a young professional in Wallingford. They all said some version of the same thing. I saw the problem every day. I finally wanted to be part of the solution instead of just feeling bad about it. That first tiny home in Beacon Hill is still standing. The backyard it sits in still belongs to the same couple who watched those tents go up along the freeway. And for the residents who moved in across the city, a 125-square-foot home behind someone's house turned out to be the most stable place they had lived in years. For 96% of them, it was the last time they were ever homeless. If you want to see another story about ordinary people solving a problem everyone else gave up on, click the video on screen now.